I'm Miquel, and I work for this graphic or as a full stack developer. And I'm going to talk about my experience in reducing the Webpack bundle at the end. Because for myself, it's something that I put a few attention because usually it works, but I think maybe it's interesting for somebody, or at the end maybe somebody has another tricks to get better results. Okay, first of all, to say thank you to all the sponsors of that event, because it won't be possible to do that share of knowledge without their help. Okay, here is what I will talk about. I will make a small introduction, then I will review what is Webpack and what Webpack configuration file looks like. Then I will talk about how to know what is in my bundle, the results of Webpack provides, how to know what is there. And then I will follow one real case that I was working on. And I will see 3 approaches to reduce the bundle size. One is related to Moment.js, another one with FunAwesome, and then how to split the output files and keep in control which type of files we generate. Okay, to start, I want to put it in perspective, because usually when we build medium-sized or small applications, we have a database, we have a server-side logic, and finally we have a front-end. And from my experience, usually the performance problems happens in the database side or in the server side. Then in the front-end, we are more focused on nice styles and fluid interaction. And the performance, it's not really, usually it's not a problem, unless you do something very specific, like an online shop. But from what kind of applications I am working, this is not the main concern, the performance in client side, because it usually works well. Okay. Here is why we structured the project in DNN. This is only for the client side. We can have multiple modules, 1, 2, or whatever, and then some code that is shared between the modules. That maybe is used for all modules or not. Maybe you have one component that is used for module 1, but not for the others, or use it by all the models. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Webpack. The definition can be quite complex, but I like to think about that is it takes all the JavaScript modules and put them together following a dependency between them. It does like a tree dependency, and it puts the child you import together with the main components. And basically, here are the 4 case parts of Webpack. The entries is what you define as your entry points to Webpack, and we will start the work in the entries you specify. Then we have the loaders. The loaders are the part that make the transformations. For example, they can transform TypeScript to JavaScript. That's the work of one loader. Or transform the JavaScript to another version of JavaScript compatible with older browsers, or CSS files to CSS. And then we have plugins. And plugins, it can be whatever you imagine. And finally, we have the output, which is the static files that Webpack generates following the configuration we set.
Yeah. Webpack is just one tool to do this, or it's the only one? Is there other things that do
No, there are multiple tools to do the same. I think a lot of people uses that, but now you have Bit.js, and I don't remember, but you can find plenty of tools that you have an entry and an output.
Webpack is the most used or the more famous, or?
I think it's widely used. It has been in the game for a long time. It's not the newest. I think there are maybe more modern alternatives, but I think it has a lot of plugins and allows you to change the configuration. But yeah, you can find an alternative that will do the same. Okay, this is what a Webpack configuration file looks like or can look like. Just to say that there are options that you don't see the configuration file, and you can have a package that is already done and it just works, and you don't have to care about the configuration. But if you like to be more in control about what the Webpack produces, it's good to build your configuration file. The first property that is important is the mode that can be production or development. Development have nice tools to help you in the development to debug your code, and the production is what you have to use when you are going to deploy that static files. And from now on, all my examples will be using the production mode, because it's what is real at the end. Another important point are the entries object, and here you can define as many entries you want. In that case, you only say to Webpack where the main file is. I am using here 4 entries because that project has 4 DNN modules, and each DNN module have a main JSX file, which is the entry point to the SPA application. And we will have 4 outputs because we have placed 4 entries. It just say where the start point. Okay, that's the output object, and you just say to Webpack where you want that static file generated will be placed, the name of that files. The name, you can do more automatic substitutions. In that case, I only use the name. The name will correspond to the entry name. Okay, if I have an entry called news, in that case the output will be called also news. And the other property can be useful to configure it, because it's the name of the global variable that will be used for that. And the JavaScript generated will have a global variable, and if you don't change that, maybe you install 2 DNN modules in the same page, or you have forget to change that, and if have the same name, it will be errors because the browser will not be able to resolve what.
So what that means?
Yeah, what.
Namespace? It's used like a namespace?
Yes, it's the name of the JavaScript global variable that will be in the browser window for that specific output. Okay, that's the module object. Here is where the loaders are. Basically, you specify which type of file want you to be transformed by which loader. For example, for JSX files or JS, we usually use Babel. For CSS, you have specify what do you want. There are multiple options. Also for the images, that's a very you have plenty of options there and a lot of to discuss, but I will not be focused on that today. Okay, here is the plugins array. You can place here the plugins you are going to use. By default, I am using that plugin, the mini CSS extract plugin. And what this plugin does is put your CSS in a file apart from JavaScript. I do it because I like to have the styles separated from the code. And finally, we have the optimization object. And we can say here to Webpack which dependencies will be in the additional file. No? We will have the outputs, as many outputs as entries, and then we'll have here the dependencies of that entries used in that case in a single file, because we are enforcing that. And we say all the dependencies in Node modules put me into a file that we'll call vendor news. And you can specify in that optimization split chunks how do you want the output from the dependencies. In that case, it's only one file and see what happens. Okay, and then if you are building an SPI module, you only have to inject one file for all dependencies that we call vendor. Here is where the React itself stays and what uses dependencies. A file for the module that corresponds to the entry path, the main file of the module. And finally, a CSS file, because we have specified with the CSS extract plugin. And that's all. And this example is from user control, but if doing MVC will only need that 3 files to run the SPI model. Okay, and it works. You can focus on development, and with that simple configuration, it will work. But if you look carefully, you can have some problems, because really you don't know what is in your Node modules. It can be anything. You are not in control of what dependencies you use. And the code works, all is good, but I think we can do something better. And the steps to improve the size of the bundle size will be first know what is in the bundle, and then identify what are the bigger problems, no? And then when we know which are the bigger problems, we can try to solve that. To know what is in the final bundle, we can use a Webpack plugin called Bundle Analyzer plugin, which is very easy to use. You have to install them, import in the top of the Webpack configuration file, and then you have to use that in the plugins array. And when you run again the Webpack Analyzer plugin will open a website locally with the contents of your bundle. Here you can see what is really in the bundle.
And what is that, for example?
Yeah, I'm going to detail that. For example, here is our code, what we have typed for that project. No? We have here the entries files we specified. That's the output, and we can see that it is the contribution is small to the total size generated. No? Here are the files, that separated files, and then we have the biggest file is where we have placed all dependencies. And we can see inside, in that boxes, where comes from each part of the bundle. And I'm going step by step to look at the biggest contributors in our bundle. First of all, you can see that Jodit, it takes a lot of space of the bundle. Jodit is where you see where you get editor, and I expect it to be a complex module, and therefore a big part of the code. But also, you can see that Phonoasm is taking a lot of the size of the final bundle. In this case, it's a Photoasm, which is the React version of the Phonoasm icons. And also, if you look at the moment, you can see that there is also a big contributor to the final size of the bundle. And the other ones, for example, we have the React DOM here, that smaller if we compare with the three big contributors. Okay, I'm going to start with the Phonoasm. I know that that project particularly only use a few icons of Phonoasm, maybe 10, not more. And I can see that something is wrong here, because for 10 icons, it looks like too much. And then I'm going to the first strategy of optimizing the bundle size. And it's not related directly with Webpack, but it was related with the way we use the Phonoasm component. To start, I was importing all Phonoasm icons in a single component. And I was able to use that, only instance the Phonoasm reference, and I say, oh, I want that icon, and it will display that icon. But I am importing all library, in that case the solid icons. And in that way I have, if I only import for example, in the main file, the solid icons of Phonoasm, it will be available to all my components childs with only that line of code. But which is good for developing, but it's not good for the final size of the bundle. But if I am using a few icons, I can be more specific and telling that I only want that icons. And if I change the way of the import of icons, being more specific and say, okay, I only want the chevron down, the chevron up, and whatever I need, I will only be picking the specific icons. And the code finally, it's very similar, but I won't use the string, I won't use the imported icon. And only with the change in the places I am using Phonoasm, we can see the changes if we run again the bundle analyzer plugin. Now, the Phonoasm contribution is smaller, and it's something I will expect when I am using only a few icons. The following problem it's related with moment.js. In our initial state, it's done. And if you look carefully to the output, we can see that there is a JS file, which I can suppose that what is the moment code. And then we have a big box, which is a locale, and I can see multiple cultures of that. Everyone knows what is moment? Yeah, okay. We have a wide support for displaying dates in any culture you want. But probably in your project you don't need all languages that moment support. In that case, I think it's only 5 or 6 languages. And here I am using another plugin which is provided by Webpack itself, which is the content replacement plugin. And basically you can filter what Webpack will import in a folder. And here I say, okay, I only need 6 languages to be supported in that project. And with only doing that change, okay, after applying that, you can see that the moment dependency has been reduced a lot, and we only have the boxes of the languages here we use in that project, which is something better, because we don't need all other languages. And finally, I'm going to review how to deal with Jodit. In that case, I did not reduce the Jodit bundle size because I cannot. I need to use them, but I know I am only using that in one DNN module that forms that project. And what are we doing here is take the Jodit code and put it in a single file. I have to change the cache groups configuration and say, I want a configuration only for Jodit. Take me only the components from Node modules that are Jodit modules, the Jodit itself, and the wrapper for React. And if you place it before the other file, the vendor in that case, the first one has the priority for Webpack and won't be included in that global reference file. And after doing that, the size of the Jodit is more or less the same, but it is in a separate file. And I will only use that file in my DNN module where I need them. The others don't need that, won't be included.
You do this manually now.
Yeah.
Is there not a way just to let Webpack do this automatically and create multiple bundles?
Yes. You can do, Webpack can do it automatically, but you are not in control. You rely on Webpack, which usually is good. In some cases, we use that.
Very large applications, and even like just the 2.6 UI, which is Angular, of course, it will generate like maybe 40 files actually.
Yeah.
To just load the parts that it
Yeah.
needs.
Yeah, you have to.
If you split into multiple, then you lose the cache benefits, no? In the sense that if one module loads 2 or 3 files, then they already cached. When the next one opens, they don't need to reload those files because they are already cached. So
yeah, but the difference is that let's say you have a JavaScript application that's maybe 5 megabytes in size. The total application, just because it has 200 dialogues,
Yeah, and also you can specify here in that, I don't remember the property name, the size of that file. I only want files, a range of sizes that to avoid too many files. Or
So maybe the point that you both mentioned is that if it's a big module, you let Webpack do it its own. If it's small here, you control granularly and then you can manage
Yeah.
it around.
yeah, I think the point is all of Paul works well, unless maybe you have to be very specific in applications what really need extreme performance. But I think for maybe you have a project which already has a Webpack configuration file, and you only adapting that file you can get big benefits. Or if you have an application which is running by default Webpack, it's also good also. And that's all. Here we have the results. Before we have 4 JavaScript files in the output, and at the end we have 5. But if we look at the size of the vendor file, which is where all the dependencies are, the size reduction has been very, very important. From more than 2 megas to 182, which is very significant downsize. And to sum up, you have to know what is in your bundle before to apply any solution, because maybe you don't need to do nothing if it's good. And then use only what you need, because the things you don't need, you don't have to it in the bundle. And that's a point that often the developers, we don't care so much about. Be aware of when we're importing modules that comes from popular packages, because we import that and works, and okay, go ahead. But if you spend a little more time checking the documentation, probably you will find a better way to import the only things, the components of the package that you will need. And if after that you think you need something, look for tools that to help you reduce the bundle size. You don't try to optimizations that maybe won't have impact, because if we look at the start, optimize our code, maybe not make sense to reduce the bundle size, because it's only a small part of the funding of bundle. And that's all. Thank you to our sponsors again. And if you have questions, or maybe you have some other strategies that you use, we can talk about that. Or
When you mentioned the one awesome icons,
yeah.
What's the way you're using it? You import the icons only in the scripts where you need them, or you have a component of the icons and then import this component in all the way?
Yeah. The first is maybe for so many projects we have the icons in the dim, and you don't need to do that in the skin. But if you don't have the icons in the skin, you can use the React component. If you are working with React, you can do 2 things. If you lose a lot of components, you can import the old library and then by icon name load the icon. But if you only want to use 1, 2, or 3 or 10, changing the way you import the icon, you can use only that icon you want, which is the
My question is that you create a component that's called icons and import the 10 icons there, and then you reuse that
You can do both things.
It doesn't make any difference or not?
I don't think, because at the end you will need all icons you use. I mean, the Webpack will check the main file and all the files that are below. And at the end, if you use that icon, it doesn't matter if it's used directly or it's in a file that has more icons.
My
Yeah.
recommendation is to always do it in the file, because if you have like global icons control, then you tend to not realize when icons are not being used anymore, because you won't dare to change that. And if you use it exactly where you need it, then you will also be able to
Yeah.
remove it when you stop using it. I also have one like additional hint.
Yeah.
Moment.js is a very good example because Moment.js is like a very old library, and so to put it this way, when they developed it, it was not made in a way that is tree shakeable. And tree shaking is the process where the Webpack or whatever will detect which code is even being used and throw away the code parts that are not being ever accessed. And Moment.js doesn't support tree shaking because the way it was developed doesn't work, and you cannot change that because that would be a breaking change. And then, of course, there's other libraries that came years later that are tree shakeable. So, for example, a typical replacement for Moment.js is DNN-Connect,
Yeah.
which is supposed to be compatible. It's not quite, so we had a hard time replacing Moment.js with DNN-Js, so we spent days doing that. But still, at the end of the day, it is often also important to recheck which libraries you're using and if they are tree shakeable, because that will reduce the bundle size a lot.
And how do you know if they are compatible or not with these three shakeable things you said?
So it's usually, if you Google it, you'll typically find somebody saying something about it. And if you Google Moment.js and tree shaking, you will immediately find out that it's not. And everybody will be recommending switch to DJS or another one. Because what we have to remember is a library like Moment.js is usually very powerful. It grew over time,
Yeah.
and it maybe has like 500 commands that you could use, but your code is just using it in one single spot just to do one conversion. And all the other 200 features are actually never accessed by the code. And the tree shaker can detect that and really just kill out those JavaScript lines out of the output.
Any more question?
Have any idea of the experience on a busy app then by making these changes? Over the course of an hour's use of the server or something like that, any way to multiply out the impact to see?
I don't know how to have a metric about the performance change of that. And
In theory, should have that, no?
no,
It's just the performance of loading files and
Yeah.
but not on the execution then.
So your question is whether it slows down?
No, not slow down, but I wonder, like if there's 1,000 users using it, what do they see? What can we make some kind of extrapolation to say that number of minutes saved or anything like that, just to quantify the benefits on a large scale?
And a question here, well, not just for you, but for everybody. Do any one of you use these plugins to obfuscate code, or does this already automatically do that?
Yeah, in that case, we had that project running, and there is a new request to make some changes, and one day, playing with that, I start to use that the bundle analyzer plugin, and I realized it's something strange here, because and I spent some time trying to what can I do, and I start to look for a solution for the moment, and then I look for a way if I could make some improvement. And finally, I realized that, for example, GeoEdit was only used in one of the modules, and I say, okay, let's try to split the output into another file. It was not a requirement, it was only to take advantage of that we have a new request, and maybe to try to do things a little bit better.
So basically a lot of work into each of the solution from your own work.
Not a lot of work to do that. No, it's yeah.
You will find many of these things documented as well.
Yeah. It's not a huge effort, and I think maybe it can be useful if you have one project that with a minor change, you can reduce the size, and it won't affect your code, and you don't need to touch anything else. Because sometimes myself, I don't have attention for that things. You are focused on developing what somebody has requested to you, and it will be a very strange case when you receive a request that says, "Oh, can you reduce from 5 megas to 2 megas that file?" While the code you do is working well, usually it's enough. Yeah. Yeah, maybe if you ask for the time, maybe one morning, because I say, oh, that's something strange here, how I can look at that, I find that in the bundle analyzer plugin, and I say, oh, let's have a look at that, and yeah, if you Google it, you can find the solution easily.